Hello everybody, my name is Rick Janzen. Welcome to my fly tying channel. Well, I can tell you it's late February. A cold front has moved in. The snow is flying. So I lit a fire in the fireplace and I've sat down at my fly tying desk and tied up a bunch of mayflies. Can't think of a better way to spend a cold February morning. This morning I've been tying up Brian Chan's blue dun. So let's take a look at how we tie this fly. So into my vise I have a Mustad number 10 dry fly hook. To that I have attached my 70 denier gray tying thread. You could also go with blue dun tying thread if you've got it. Our first piece of business is to tie in our deer hair wing. And we're going to go a bit on the sparse side of that. We don't want to have too thick or bunchy a wing, and we like to keep that slender. The mayfly wings are quite delicate little things, sitting up on them, making them look like sailboats. So we don't want to over bunch our deer hair there. So we've stacked that in the stacker to align the tips, and we're going to bring that in. For length, we like about the hook length, the shank of the hook. So I measure it against the hook like that, and then I bring it up to my tie-in point, and I give it a couple of looser wraps, and then I bind down on it and cinch down on that deer hair to bind it into place. Without letting go of the butts, now I'll angle it up and bring my scissors in to cut it at a slope, just like I did with the other deer hair, or the other pattern with the deer hair wing. Now I'm going to bring those wings up and stand it up a little bit, put a wrap or two around the post just to sort of gather it. And then I'm going to work down those butts there to wrap them and secure them into place and start to build that taper I want for the fly. The salient feature of a mayfly is that gentle taper from tail to thorax, and that's where the deer hair butts and the thread can come in to do a very nice job of creating that illusion, replicating the naturals. So I'm going to give those little tag ends there a bit of a haircut before we carry on. And I'm going to turn the vise and just take my scissors in there and trim some of those ends. They will get covered up by the dubbing, so I'm not worried about getting them completely off or shaving them tight, as long as they're short enough to be covered by the dubbing. It's looking good. Our tail is 2 fibers of moose mane. And I like to select those off, or not moose mane, moose body hair, because they're more slender than the mane. And I like to select 2 that are about equal length. Try to get just 2 out of the patch there. That's always the challenge. And about the similar color too, that's what I'm also looking for. So I line those up so the tips are about equal length. I hope you can see that on the camera. The tips are about equal length there. And we'll just get those tied in place. If there's a curl to them, I like them to curl up. And they can be fairly long. Mayfly tails are quite long, slender things, so they can be equal length to the hook shank as well. I'll put in 1 wrap in underneath them to stand them up, give them a little look there so they're upright, and then we'll cut that off. And then for our ribbing, I'm using moose mane, and in this case I'm using an olive dyed moose mane to give it a distinct color from the blue dubbing that's going to come in and create the body. So olive dyed moose mane in this case, you can vary that color and play around with that all you like. Natural is just fine as well. So I bring that into a point where the ribbing is going to start to a thickness of the hair so that the ribbing will start to show. and tie that in there, give it a couple of good wraps, and cut off the tip tag end. And I'm just going to secure that in place so it's not going to go anywhere. And for our dubbing, I am using light dun Semperfly, the super fine dubbing in the natural range. So I'm using this light dun color here. And I prepare my thread and my fingers with a little bit of dubbing wax. And we get that up and down there. Now here we want to go very, very sparse with the dubbing, especially toward the tail, as we want to create a very tapered body. And so we're just going to go very slender at this part of the fly. I'll make one turn and spin it. Keep doing that. And as I run past the dubbing material on the thread, I'll add a little more. We don't need a heavily dressed fly with the dubbing here. Just want to create that fuzzy iron blue color on the body. And there we go. We're getting that built up there. We've got a bit of a taper, you can see there now, which looks just fine to me. And I'm going to bring my thread forward now and forward of the deer hair. Then using the moose mane, this is where it gets a little finicky here. You're wrapping the moose mane and trying to keep it from catching that deer hair wing. So I'm making these wraps as even as I can, usually 4 or 5 of them, and moving that deer hair out of the way as I do so. And create that beautiful segmentation that mayflies can be so prominent on the mayfly. Then I bring that moose mane fiber forward and tie it off in front of the wing. Okay, just a few wraps there to lock that in place, and we can cut off our excess there. There we go. So another few wraps around the post, gathering that post together. And our grizzly hackle forms our hackle, and you don't need to go with your finest grizzly hackle. The really fine, long, slender ones can actually be too short and work against you. So you want something a little bit longer, although they're not terribly webby. And I'm stripping off the fibers that are below the tie-in point for about 1/4 to 1/2 inch in there. And then I'll cut off the excess of the feather at the base there and tie this in right here by its main shank. Give it some really good wraps there to secure that in place. Cut off our tag end. Again, we don't need to get it totally flush, as there'll be a little bit of dubbing ahead of the wing here. Now I'm giving this about 3, maybe 4 wraps around the post. And one more, I think, just to give it a little more floatability. Now I'm going to wrap the thread around the post below and above that hackle and weaving it through there. And that secures that hackle in place with 3 good turns around the post. Now a lot of people will whip finish it right here on the post. I prefer to whip finish it right behind the eye. And in order to do that, I'm going to pull off a little thread here and do one more tiny patch of dubbing. Very sparse again and slender. There's my dubbing. And we'll just get that onto the thread. This tiny little patch here, I'm just trying to get the smallest amount possible and parsing it out. And just a tiny little head area. And I'm taking off excess there that I don't like. It's already too much. So again, less is more with the dubbing in front of the wing. And what I'll do is I'll lift that hackle up out of the way and wrap my dubbing in there. And then we can whip finish the fly here right behind the eye. It's a lot simpler, I find, than trying to whip finish on the post, because it requires turning the vise, and then sometimes the post wants to flex on you and not catch the thread, and it makes it a difficult process. So there we've got the iron blue or blue dun, originally tied by Brian Chan and shown in the Gilly quite a few years ago. I've modified it a bit. He went with an elk hair tail. I've gone with moose mane or moose body hair. And he didn't have a rib on his, and I wanted to add that little feature to this fly to make it a little more look like the patterns that I see on the water. It's a great little fly. It'll float. The great thing about parachute hackles is they always land upright. And the post there is a great feature to keep that fly afloat, and so does the hackle. Beautiful job of keeping that fly up on the water. Enjoy tying this fly. Enjoy fishing it more. Tight lines, good luck, and thank you for watching.